Hello, gals and guys. It's your host, Phil Larson, and this is your motivational high five on anxiety. Let's do this. Hello and welcome. If you're new to the podcast, well, it's short and to the point with an affirmation practice at the end, a kind of a positive self-talk exercise. And really, it's up to you if you want to partake in this, but I would hope those that do experience kind of the rewiring in our brain that we have talked about quite often in this podcast. If you're interested in learning more about what that even means, if that's intriguing to you, check out episode 15. For more information on the podcast, visit thestoryshop.tv/podcast. And what is The Story Shop? The Story Shop is a video production company that I work at. I work here writing music. We collaborate on a lot of stuff, and then I write some of my own stuff to sell across the interwebs. And it's a great collaboration effort. And they help with some of the production costs to produce this podcast. And if you are finding this extremely helpful, go visit that site, thestoryshop.tv/podcast, and there is a blue donation button. It would be incredibly helpful, as we don't run ads, at least not right now. And if you like that, then help support this thing that we're just doing because we like to do. Thank you in advance for your support. Another way to support the podcast would be to rate and review it positively on iTunes and anywhere else you get your podcast. It helps in rankings. And who knows, as it moves up and gets more of an audience, maybe your ranking will inadvertently help someone find the health they need. Today on anxiety, what I've talked about in past episodes, I've been pretty upfront, pretty forward about my own bouts with anxiety. And I find that actually this is a common theme in listener emails to me. That people are drawn to this podcast maybe because they are wakening up to their own emotions, kind of like I did for the last 3 years or so, just waking up to my emotions. And what happened was I woke up to my own anxiety. And the reality that I have been suppressing a lot of my anxieties for many years. And I found that out when I started to have regular panic attacks. One of the most helpful things I've heard about anxiety is from Benedictine monk brother David Steindl-Rast on the podcast On Being. He talks about how the Latin root of anxiety goes back to words that we understand in English as narrowness and choking. He likens it to being born. And if we resist it, we die. And maybe not a physical death, but maybe a spiritual or figurative death. Anxiety then is an appropriate response to life. We must embrace it to flourish. And he talks about fear is the resistance against anxiety. When we let fear control our anxiety, we tend to then suppress it. We go into a resistance mode. I'm not going to feel that. We are in denial. Whereas if we go with it, then it brings into birth, newness, and into freedom, into greater fullness. We have to go through the narrowness, the choking, the anxiety. We can't let it paralyze us or deny it. We have to go through it. And when he talks about the narrowness and the choking, my nerdiness comes out in one of my favorite movies, the original Independence Day, where at the end, the two main characters are rushing to exit the mothership that they just, implanted a bomb. And as the door is closing, you could see their chances of survival narrowing and their anxiety heightening and their speed increasing, which is what needed to happen in order for freedom, in order for newness, in order for life. And they squeezed through it. They traveled through the anxiety. They used it to push them through the narrowness, the chokingness, and achieve their desired outcome. And this is what Brother David Steindl-Rast talks about. When, in hindsight, even our worst anxious moments in our life, when we look back, we realize it was the beginning of something completely new. Do you have those moments in your life where at the time you go, how is this going to happen? How am I going to get through this? This couldn't get any worse. And yet you did. You embraced your anxiety in the way that it pushed you, in a healthy way that it pushed you toward a birth to new things. I want to read this description of anxiety that I like. Anxiety is not the same as fear, which is a response to a real or perceived immediate threat, whereas anxiety is the expectation of a future threat. Well, then how does fear cause our resistance to anxiety? I think it is when we perceive this future threat to be immediate. Then the fear becomes resistance to our embracing healthily our anxiety. I've mentioned I'm a composer, and it's kind of a hard life. How I make my money is pretty unpredictable. And when things are slow, like they are right now, I have this increase in anxiety. And I think it's going to be like this forever. So this thing that I fear in the future, that I won't be able to even pay my bills or put food on the table or anything, I convince myself that it's happening right now. And it paralyzes me. I get completely paralyzed. And in hindsight, looking back on yesterday, which was kind of a low point, what that anxiety caused me to do was reach out. So I started reaching out to other composers, people who are a little further on in their career, people I want to be like. And one guy who is quite a bit further down responded back and was really helpful, and even offered me an opportunity to collaborate that I am super excited about. And if I did not let anxiety push me forward, I would have not found that newness, that freedom, that something on the other side of this narrowness and choking. What is there for you that as things start to begin closing in, as often panic attacks do feel that way, your throat starts tightening up and it becomes hard to breathe? If you were to figuratively go through these moments, and the fact of the matter is, you're not going to die, so you're going to get through it. What's on the other side? Hang in there. You can do it. Keep going. You got this. And at the end of every episode, we try to convince ourselves that we got this. We can do this. But ultimately, you have to make this choice. Say, I may feel crippled, but hey, I want a better me. I want to get through and see what's on the other side. And we do that in every episode by finding a reflection of ourselves and repeating a positive affirmation. And so either now or at some point today or in the next couple of days, make this commitment to yourself and say these words to yourself as you look at yourself. I can embrace my anxiety because what's on the other side of it makes it worth going through it. And it does, but you'll never know if you don't try. And that's a decision that's yours. You have to make it. It starts with you.